The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.
Budget, and I am the Chairman of Finance. With me this evening is the Clerk, Pauline Cormier, and the third member, Bob Tossi. We do have a quorum of the City Council, so I'm required to read this notice of a City Council Committee of the Whole meeting is posted in the event that a quorum of City Councilors is present at the Standing Committee meeting. If less than a quorum of the City Council is present, no committee of the whole meeting shall take place. If a quorum is present, any such meeting shall be restricted to the Standing Committee agenda items listed above. Our first item this evening at 6 o'clock is going to be a budget overview by the mayor. So when you are ready, I will let you present your fiscal year 2026 budget, and then we will go from there.
Who'd have thunk we'd be doing the 2026 fiscal year budget? I thought we just completed the last one. Obviously, the comptroller, Jan Rennington, and grants for the city is Wendy Weeks. So we'll jump in at any particular point. If you have any questions, no need to wait till the end. While it's on your mind, if you want to jump in, just yell and wave, and we'll glad to answer the questions. I think the lay of the land, kind of a snapshot as to what's happening in Massachusetts and around the country, really. And that is, it's getting tougher and tougher for cities and towns to balance budgets. And there was an article that we'll reference in a little bit. And this is not to kind of point at any communities, just to show you the diversity of the communities that are having a difficult time getting their budgets balanced. And so you can go to, these are just some of the communities in the Commonwealth, some of the quotes from some of my colleagues facing difficult times. And you can keep going on the slides here, everybody can read. If you want to go back there on the sort of pension fund, 54%. In a lot of communities, are actually lower than that. We're still maxed out at 100%. We'd still like to see it a little larger than that, just as a little bit of a comfort zone. This is just some of the headlines that we picked up on. I'm sure you've seen the same. People send them to us all of the time. Westfield, $16 million budget deficit. Salem Schools, $4.9 million. And I think you'll hear a different story from the superintendent when, and her team when they get up here. Okay. This is the most recent article. The number of, and I think this is worth something that I would read, the number of override votes is reaching a 10-year high. Even worse than the amount of new revenue municipalities are requesting is ballooning. So not only are they going for overrides and debt exclusion, but they're ballooning. They're much larger than they've ever been. 50 Massachusetts municipalities voted on overrides for 2025. 5 years ago it was 30. 2018 it was 22. Dozens of municipalities and local school districts are fighting the same budget battle, with homeowners ultimately asked to pick up the slack. Education costs, especially for special ed, transportation, are projected to keep rising. Wages, health insurance, and utilities are also on the upswing. No different than anyone that's watching this at home who looks and says, yeah, those are some of the same issues that we're, or anybody that owns a business that says, those are some of the same issues that we're dealing with. So are we. This is just an example and a list. Did we give them a copy of the list? So you have it, you can look at it later, but these are different overrides and debt exclusions. As you know, I think the first school that we did in 1995 was a middle school. We did it for, I don't know, 12 million, 13 million. And now the school project is close to $130 million. But
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I believe these are the ones that passed
Yes.
correctly, and the list they
Yes.
have is
All of them.
all of them.
okay. So you have both the ones that passed and the ones that didn't. But it's getting tougher and tougher to get some of these overrides through. And debt exclusions. Unrestricted government aid from the state is still $369,000 short of what it was in 2009. We had some tough times in '08, understandably, but that's still unrestricted government aid that we're not getting, and it not only hasn't increased, it's actually, if you add in the inflation rate, the money that we're getting from the state is actually less than what we were getting back in 2009. That graph shows it all. Leominster budget request, not funded in the state budget. There are a number of things that we requested over the years that have not been passed. And we have been trying to get an elevator for the senior center for, I think I was 20 when we started on that project. But a request for $25,000 for new cameras at Doyle Field, the Alzheimer's Park for downtown, a person to provide assistance to elderly disabled with resources. We've put in for that. And each year, we've asked for projects of less than $50,000. So none of those things have been funded. So over 400 local projects included in the House budget, similar to Leominster's request. First time we did not receive any of the requests for city departments. Millionaire spending technical bill included $10 million in earmarks. The House version included $25 million for parking garage in the Speaker's hometown, and the Senate version included $5 million for upgrades to the gym at Bridgewater State. So that shows you what's going on there. During times of, I say this all the time, during times of prosperity, danger lurks everywhere. Growth masks waste, extravagance, and inefficiencies. The moment growth slows, the accumulated sins of the past are revealed all the way to the bottom line. And so during the good days, we get ready for the not so good days. And that's been our philosophy right along. And if you run a business, that's how you run your business. If you run a home, you run your home that way. You don't base your budget and your life wishes based on a couple of years of a good economy. Regardless of how long that lasts, everybody that's here knows that if you've lived long enough, you definitely hit some recessions and some soft times. So that's the principles that we follow here in the city when it comes to budgeting. Budget highlights. Following a decrease in the prior year's budget, we have maintained a level funded approach for this year's budget. As I said, I didn't start off this with the presentation with doom and gloom, just sort of showing you the lay of the land and the reality of what's going on around us. Several of our larger contracts come back with significant increases. Our health insurance increases at 14%, rubbish removal increase at 9%. The state decided that they were going to They were no longer going to allow us to put mattresses, and this is one small example of what goes on frequently. So, and I agree with them. Let's not put mattresses in the solid waste removal pile if we can, in fact, recycle that. Councilor Tossi knows, Councilor, you know all about recycling.
Oh, yes.
And everything that you can save, but that's done in a different manner.
It is.
In this particular case, we're taking mattresses, throwing them on the side of the road. Sometimes they have to sit there for days because they can't possibly pick them up all at once. People coming into the city, these mattresses are sitting on the side of the road. And we started out, and this is one example, we started out at 163,000.
Yep.
So they imposed this on us and said, you can no longer put these in the solid waste stream. Well, that's fine, we agree with you. Well, now you have to separate them. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, we start picking them up. The trash company has to buy a separate truck, have to hire the people to do this, and then we gotta go out and pick these things up and then get them to a recycling center. So we started out at 163,000.
Yeah, projected to end around 213.
And those increases will continue on.
Yeah.
So that's just one example, and as I said, rubbish removal has increased 9%. We needed additional funds for that. The 2025 tax levy ceiling was $96,775,106.
And for the additional funds on it, we level funded that. So we never know how many mattresses we're going to pick up. So instead of increasing it to the end, we still level funded the 160,000. So, you know, next year we may need an additional appropriation to cover it. Just depends on how many we pick
And we're
up.
also monitoring the addresses, so we have a list of the addresses that we're picking them up, and who seems to be the frequent flyers, like why all of a sudden are we getting all these? Are they coming in, you know, from Barry and Elliott or something? Are they leaving them off here? Is somebody have an apartment house and they're bringing them in from other towns because they make you pay for them, and they're bringing them in, leaving them at the curb for us to pick them up? So we're keeping an eye on that. We have a very accurate list of that. The fiscal year 2026 property tax, 2.5 tax levy increase allows $2.419,378,000. So that gives you an idea of what we pick up for that. The levy new growth estimated receipts increased about $900,000 to $1 million. And I can't say this enough in sort of preparing us, is we need growth. Our tax levy is our tax levy. If we stay within Prop 2.5, that will only bring us X amount of dollars. You'll see tonight that our budget, just the mandates that we have on us, way outpaced the 2.4 million in new growth. I mean, in the levy, and the $900,000 to $1 million that we get in tax revenue.
And those
in new
are
growth.
estimates for the new growth. We will
Correct.
not know what we need, you know, or what we get till.
Could be up,
fall.
it could be down.
Could be.
The reality is, office buildings, there's no market for offices. The luck that we've had is existing businesses in town seem to be the ones that are buying the office buildings for their use. They have growing capacity, growing need. We've really been fortunate. As I go around the state for different reasons and capacity as mayor, I could tell you there's a lot of office space. I think you know that as well. There's just tons of it. You get out in the metropolitan Boston, the cranes are gone. There's no more new buildings, you know, going up anywhere. And in industrial buildings, big demand for existing space, but not big demand for new construction because of the high cost of construction here in New England. Now, we've done the estimated new growth, as I said, between 900 and 1 million. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. We're usually pretty good about estimating it on the conservative side.
It's been, you know, lower the past couple of years, but it's usually been right in the middle,
Right.
so.
The room tax is estimated at 200,000. Remember, that shot down when we had COVID. The overlay release, we released some of the funds from overlay. We always try to keep a conservative amount in there for abatements, but we feel safe this year with using 250,000. I didn't see was there a piece in there for the meals tax? Did I gloss over that?
It wasn't in there,
Okay.
but we did
All right.
use a small portion of the meals tax. Yep.
So we're predicting on the meals tax, again, we don't know. We didn't get a lot of good information from the Department of Revenue, so we look to other communities our size and try to measure out restaurants, but it's a very hard thing to predict.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna need a year or two to really be able to say that that's a solid number that we can use.
Jen, what will be left in the overlay after we reduce it by $250,000?
We'll have just under 2 million, I believe. Yeah, we have a little over 2 million now.
But remember, every retail complex every year applies for an abatement, whether it's the mall or Watertown Plaza, it's just a common thing. And sometimes they appeal and they win, so.
When's the last time we released any money from the overlay?
We took 250,000 last year as well.
Okay.
We made a couple small adjustments, not many, but a couple small, because clearly they don't have the funds to hire new people. We converted one part-time position to a full-time with a contribution from the rec department, and we added a .25 person in economic development. We had that person from Arbor funding, and that person is the person that's responsible for putting all the ads up on Facebook and social media, doing everything for us on the website. It's just, most cities have a complete team that does that, or they privatize it, which costs a lot more than that. So we've kept that position at a .25, quarter of a person. And that's the extent of any new position. We continue to use one-time money for one-time purchases. A lot of communities are in trouble. They used one-time money for fixed cost, and now they're in trouble. That's the reason for some of the situations we've seen, and it's more common and become more common than ever. Exclusive of Arbor, we currently have $20.3 million in capital-related grants awarded and in the process, with $8 million awaiting decisions. Capital projects continue at increased levels without projects being budgeted or using free cash. Detailed slides to follow later in the presentation. Wendy will show you some of the grants so you have an idea. It's a major undertaking, but we're pretty successful at it. Looking to the future, we'll continue to hold our conservative approach to budget and overall financial philosophies. I have to say, there are these situations that happen around the state. We're almost complete on all of our unions, and with negotiations. They all were up this year, and we're down to just a few. But I have to say, thus far, extreme leadership we had a good negotiating team on both sides at the school for the school negotiations, and there are a number of unions I think the superintendent can speak to. But I got to tell you, everyone was respectful, understanding, and they came to agreement pretty quick, which was pretty impressive, and that's the way it's been with most of the unions here. So we have really good relationships with the unions. When an issue comes up, we sit down, and our goal is to resolve. So we thank the unions. They have been really understanding of the current conditions, and have been real professionals. So I thank them. All right. Here's some of the sort of, as we get into the budget details here, online and searchable. That's really convenient. Most people, I say City Hall closes at 4 in the afternoon on Friday, but it really doesn't. You can pay your bills. There's so much that you can do online now, and more and more people are away during the winters. People are traveling, whatever it might be. Somebody forgot to pay a bill, you can jump online and pay that bill. Links from the table of contents to each section of the bid. Budget driver analysis, comparative budget by function group. Anyway, that's just to say that you can pretty much find out anything you want to find out online, including the 3-year financial summary. There's your breakdown. I think you have it in front of you. By general fund, water, as you know, we don't have an enterprise fund, but we have a separate fund for water and sewer. There's your breakdown in our budget here. We break it down from general government all the way down to group health insurance. As you can see, group health insurance. And remember, back, I would say 8 or 10 years ago, when communities were going into the GIC, which is a state program, we had to make a decision. And again, we sat down with the unions, all of them, on both sides of the school and the city, and we were able to negotiate something that was fair to everyone. It's a change, but it was fair. We came to agreement. We didn't have to go into the GIC, and I think as of last Monday, the GIC was out of money. So the state now has to step in and make appropriations in the tone of hundreds of millions, 240 million, to get them to balance their budgets.
And I think they're up, and I think those, Jen and I had a discussion, those are up like 21% this year. We're up 14 on ours.
Right.
They're up 21, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Anywhere from 18 to 22%, depending on the plan.
So the GIC wouldn't have been a bargain right now if we had gotten into it.
no, that would have not been the right move. But again, when we have an issue, we sit down with the unions, we hammer it out, everyone's respectful, and we get to, we get to yes and what's best for everyone. And that was a good decision that we made then, and I'm glad we did, and more so now after I see what condition the GIC is in now, I'm even more happier that we were able to come to resolution.
Prescription drugs are really what.
Yeah, and you can expect more of that as there's
Yeah.
more pharmaceuticals and coming up with more
killing.
prescription drugs that help people, and we want people to live longer, but there's also an expense to that. These pharmaceutical companies, you know, there's a lot that goes into getting something passed by the FDA, and there's huge money and investment, and but at the same time, there's a cost to the user and, you know, to us.
Yeah, there is.
But anyway, I don't know, if you want to go back, if you have any questions about any of those areas there, I know that you have budget hearings with most of those departments coming up tomorrow. But we point out that, you know, liability and our human services, we don't have, you can compare us, you have plenty of time, you can compare us to other communities our size and see what their budgets are and what they fund and trash fees and everything else that goes along with, you know, revenues. So we really try to run a tight ship here. I shouldn't say we try, we really do.
We do.
I know that's small to read for anybody that's standing away from it, but that's pretty much a, you know, the pie breakdown of the, you know, the city's budget. Here we talk about the budget drivers, and, you know, for, you know, we're lucky we're getting assistance from the state, and that has been very helpful to the school department budget, but that also raises the amount that the city is responsible for. So the state has said, hey, you know, we're putting up money, we want to see you and your contribution, we want to see your commitment to education, and that's a driver for us. And then obviously the group health insurance at 13.71%. There's the comparisons or the breakdowns between 25 and 26, which is what I just showed you in the previous slide. There's your 5-year summary, starting from the right. If you're looking at it from where we're looking at it from, it's starting from fiscal year 2022, and that's the approved budget. You're starting from the right, looking to the left. That's 5 years of city budget. Again, we break it down by percentages, so you can see it. And there's the trend over 5 years and the percentage on the impact. Now, if you have a small budget and you're the senior center and you incurred some cost that were there, we went from a part-time to a full-time a few years ago, it's going to look like it was some sort of a huge increase, but it's all in perspective. Prior to the bond, for the police department, the city had paid down $10 million already out of free cash towards the cost of the station. We've been putting more and more to that to bring down that cost. The quicker we can pay off that debt, the better we're going to be. Most of the projects, doing it this way, instead of 30-year loans, we've been able to get our loans down to 20.
Yeah.
So if we can continue on this trend, a little at a time, by the time we reach that 20-year mark, we may, or 25, may have to go to 25, but
Yep.
hopefully.
The 20 million had to be at 30, but the 10 million we'll be able to pay for with free cash.
Right.
The 4.8 is, ban is for the athletic field
Yeah.
in high school?
No, the 4.8 is the remaining portion that we need to pay on the police station.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
So it's the short-term financing that's left. We've already appropriated $2 million, and next year we can, you know, either choose to roll it one more time. The state changed the rules from
For short
5
term.
years. And yeah, you can roll it up to 10, or we can, you know, hopefully pay the remainder of the 4.7. and
That'll save a
finish.
lot of money in costs for the bond, right?
It's huge. Yep.
Yeah.
And interest.
Yep.
Yep. And that's the way we've done it for all our projects. We haven't gone more than 20 years on any of the projects. So that's huge for us.
Yep. No, the athletic fields, we actually set money aside each year before the project went out to bid. So
That's in
they
a
had-
capital account?
Yes.
Right.
So they had
We started
money
paying that
already.
down even before we put it out to bid, so
Yep.
we're making payments on it. So now that it's under construction, we're pretty much paid.
Yep.
No, no bond.
No bond.
Nope. So again, it saves 10 to 15 years of interest on nearly 1/3 of the total cost of the project for the police station. And let me just say, I've had my peers come out, who are building police stations, And square footage to get something of this quality is around another $10 million right now, the cost of the project. So we did it at a good time. We acquired all the properties around there. I can't tell you what we paid for them because it's...
Jen, can you put that, so in other words, if this was a 30-year bond on the entire construction cost, what would the savings, what would it cost? What would the additional cost be based on the way we're doing it?
I would have to, obviously.
The long calculation.
Yeah, look it up. But we permanently financed the 20 million, and the whole project was just under 32. And so we've been able, we'll be able to pay 12 million with free cash and other financing sources. So, and we pay probably around $700,000 for a year for the 20 million for the principal and interest. So
Half of that
yeah, about $400,000 a year that you would save.
translates to other local services.
Yeah, just like you would do with a mortgage for your house. You figure it all out, you amortize it to 30 years, and then you look at it. What would a 20-year loan cost? A lot
Right,
less.
a lot
Or a
less.
10-year loan
Yeah.
cost? A lot less. So this gives you an idea, and when I wanted to break it down, we talked about it, and I said, let's just show them the outstanding. This is what the city owes right now. This is the total amount the city owes. We owe $20 million for the police station. That was a $30 million project. We paid down $10 million. We've got almost, and I'll round it off, a $4.8 million the bond anticipation note right now. We just discussed that, and another $2.4 million for Fallbrook School. As you know, we went out and borrowed that. It's a very long process, but they wanted to see that we were in fact, committed to doing the project, or at least the initial stages of it, which is the evaluating of the facilities that determine, A, whether we need a project, 2, whether it be a renovation, whether it be a renovation expansion, or would it be a new school. The result is it's a new school. So that's our
So-called
outstanding.
soft costs.
I call it, wow, it's a lot of money to
It's
find out.
crazy. And the 20 million, the whole payment for principal and interest is 1.2 million that we pay. So it's about, $600,000-700,000 that just in interest that we would save.
Look at you doing that stuff off the top of your head. You sure you're not an accountant?
No.
All right.
All right.
Is our cash for one-time cost instead of borrowing? There are communities that will deficit spend everything, and then when they get their free cash paid off. We don't do that. We put a real capital budget together, and we use the funding. Now, a lot of it, which Wendy will talk to you in a little bit, is about how we spent a lot of our Arbor funding. Instead of spending it on one time, instead of spending it on fixed cost, we used it to accelerate our capital program, which has put us in really good shape. And again, here's what we use our cash for one-time cost instead of borrowing, whether it's almost everything that we do. It's one-time project, one-time cost. That's what we use our funding for. So that gives you a sample of it. Another slide. Okay, there's your breakdown. We don't know what the final budget's going to be this year, but that gives you a little bit of an understanding on the house, the breakdown of charter school, and the total education aid. Net school spending, you'll see a breakdown. The superintendent and Melanie do a great job breaking it down on their end, but we'll give you a quick look at it. The 888 is always, the eights is a sign of new beginnings. And so, superintendent, what do you think? I mean, isn't that pretty cool? But where's the 888, and where is the extra cents at the end? If I give you 88 cents, we change the budget to 88? Absolutely. Melanie, I'm gonna give you 88 cents. I want you to change it to 111 million. I want you to end with 5 8s at the end. Although there's some 13s in there, so don't be superstitious. So there's a non-net school spending eligibility. These are things that don't count towards net school spending. So the transportation, and I don't know, Superintendent, but every day I'm on Mechanic Street, there's 5 buses. And they must all be going to different schools because there's no way. They're all going to one school. But anyway, that's our transportation cost anticipated. And there's a new contract, I think, coming up next year I'm sure they'll get into that, but we're at 6 million. Debt service is right now at 2.4. So there's, for the schools, and that's $8.4 million that doesn't count towards that school spending. You want to go back, we can just show that slide. Total increase in direct spending to the school department, and that's up 7.49%. I'll leave that for the school department, but we included that in our budget, in case somebody picks up our budget but might not look at the total
Highlights.
budget. What's that?
I said budget highlights.
Yeah. Just go back a slide, we discussed this at the school committee. We have an increase in students and 113, so I think we've all agreed, we'll keep an eye on that next October to see whether or not those 113 students are still here. It could be that we have more, but we'll keep an eye on that because that's where a lot of the funding comes based on those October numbers. And while I'm at it, I think we were very disciplined from the very beginning about the ESSER funds, which are comparable to the ARBOR funds that the city gets, and not using one-time funding. We all understood if there was going to be a contract with an employee, it would be a 3-year contract, and we all understood that money was eventually going to go away, and it did this year. And I'm just happy to say that we didn't get caught up like a lot of other schools departments and a lot of school systems that, I don't know what they were thinking, but they used that one-time money for fixed costs, and they've hired people, and they've got quite a mess to contend with. But we work very closely. All our departments work closely with the school department and have a good, excellent relationship. And here are some of the things that we've done. Wendy might be the facilitator on some of these, but we get, obviously, the assistance from the school department. And we applied for a $750,000 grant for the Samoset School lighting project. We're waiting for that. We were awarded full-time person to research and apply for and manage energy initiatives for the city and the school department and the citizens. So it gets, I don't know about you, but it's on your private life, I don't know how many more forms we can fill out. Everything's a form, and there's never such thing as a quick form. It's always like multiple forms. And so I know that I have spent, I don't know how much time with helping people to get to a third-party electric supplier. And it's actually not that hard, but it's just another form. And then you're given like 10 different options, and they're all a little bit different. So we're actually going to have somebody, not only is going to be here to help the city and the school department, it's going to be also here to help the citizens of the city. So we can go to the senior center or the different community centers and fairs and help people to look at their energy bills and see where they might qualify from some assistance or an energy audit, or whatever it might be.
It's grant funded.
And it's grant funded.
Yes.
Upfront expenses for the design of Fallbrook School, as you saw, an amount of $2.5 million. We used city solar credit surplus and national grid incentives to upgrade lighting at various schools. The state grant for $200,000 to upgrade system-wide fiber optics, that's currently being completed now, and we fully funded the athletic fields behind the high school, which is, again, currently underway.
I have a question.
Yes.
About the high school athletic project. So when the bids came in, the project design was scaled way back. So phase 1, which includes the track and field, does not include softball fields, doesn't include lights, doesn't include bleachers and storage facilities, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when you say that the project is fully funded, are you talking about phase 1 being fully funded, which is, again, just the track, not the softball field?
The project that we originally came to the city council on
Right.
is the project that's being done now.
And that includes the softball field?
No,
It includes
that was all added on later.
Okay.
Yep.
That wasn't my recollection. But what's been funded now is the track and field. No lights, no softball field.
What you see up there right now. Yep.
Okay. I
Yep.
just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Team effort, it really is. And one of the, I think, novelties here in city government is the absence of silos. I would say that everyone who works here has another talent, and I'm amazed by it. And people are always willing to jump in But one thing is, people always willing to work together, whether it's the school, there's no silos, well, that's the school department, or that's the city, we don't do that. Everyone works together, and it's been exciting. It's an exciting environment, all ages, it's diverse. It's just really fun to see it all come together. One thing I think that even the state and the federal government acknowledges is that we did a lot of work before September 11th in 2023. We did a whole lot of work. That was something that Wendy headed up in the conservation, but really Wendy, on really getting ready for those days when something like this natural disaster would happen. And it's a good thing that we did a lot of I&I removal, the storm water system, and the sewer system. We have done a lot of work. A lot of our dams were rebuilt, and they all comment on that. It's a good thing we did all of that work. We've been in terrible shape. But anyway, it has its mitigation plan, has enabled us $8.8 million. You want to talk a little bit about that, Wendy, since that's really your sort of lane?
So in 2020, we did the hazard mitigation plan, which basically allowed us to prepare a little bit better for climate change. Since that time, we've been able to access our money for our priority projects with Moose Brook, North Nashua. We got 2 grants for North Nashua, plus some emergency funds for the flood. And the state actually came to us about Burridge Ave. They knew it was a priority for us. It's something good or bad because of the flood, but they actually waived the 25%, so we were able to access those funds for Burridge Ave with no cost to the city, which is currently under design. We have a meeting coming up at the end of the month. The open space plan, we were one of the first communities, I don't know, 1998, I think, that did an open space and recreation plan, which has allowed us to purchase so much open space and build and refurbish all our city parks. We're currently doing the Prospect Park, which is almost complete. So we've been able to get $2.4 million since the last plan was done. We've actually been given an opportunity by the state now to extend that plan for 3 years instead of doing a complete other plan for 7 years, which is a huge overhaul and a huge effort. They're going to let us update it just a little bit and access more funds more quickly, just through a 3-year update. And then with the funds we spent through ARPA and the funds that we've gotten in combination with grants, such as the MassWorks grant, we've been able to do for the 3 times the paving for the 4th straight year. This is a list. I know it's small, but this is a list of our current grant funds that are being implemented at North Nashua River, Burridge Avenue we talked about. Things like there's a Litchfield Street culvert, which people probably don't even realize is there, which is the total cost of that is $2.1 million. And we've gotten $1 million so far. We may get another $1 million. It's putting together these complex grant programs. Like some projects now have 3 grant programs involved with them. And the state likes to see that. It's creative, and it's a good way for them to spend their money on big projects. Marcello Ave is almost complete. That we actually saved some money on that one. We saved about $500,000, and the state is allowing us to extend that across the street to pave Pierce Street and to do some additional sewer relining across the street. So we're actually able to expand that scope. Moose Brook obviously is a huge one. We're going to be starting that in a couple weeks. And then we've been able to get some funds from MassDOT to help us out with some of the flood projects, which will be going out to bid on July 1st. So in the end, the total is over $20 million of grants we've gotten for the match of only $1.3 million, which is, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm not saying that just because of me. It's because we have teams in every department that when I say this grant's available, they come with a budget, they come with a scope, especially the DPW. It's a really big team effort. And I think that we've actually gotten to the point now where people recognize that in the state and federal government, And I always wanted to get to this point where they would actually say, hey, we've got some funding left over from another project somewhere else, they can't use it, and they'll call us. So, this is a good place to be for us. It's a lot of money that takes, out of we don't have to use any free cash for these projects. It's just, it's a lot, especially for our infrastructure. It's a big deal. So it's a big team effort. This is the current grants pending. I tell everybody, I want the ladder truck. That's but that's the big one right now. And then the Lancaster Street Mass Works grant, we're putting that in. That's involves the culvert, a couple culverts, some paving, and so that'll be a big project that we're putting in. But we haven't seen the impact of, a lot of people talk about the federal system, and we haven't seen the impact in terms of grants. All our grants are still moving forward, so I'm happy about that. So we'll have, hopefully if we get all these, we'll have another $8 million with only a $228,000 match from the city. This is a bit complicated. I think that Councilor Cormier I think I distributed a sheet with a little bit more of an explanation on this, but it's, we got some money from an earmark from the state when we did not get the FEMA funding of the $30 million that we needed. We got $3.6 million from the state. They were trying to use this fund as a fund of last resort, if that's the way you want to put it, where we're trying to use, for our priority projects, we're trying to find any grant we can get first. So distributing reservoir, we're paying for the design for that. We paid for the house at 208 Pleasant, the design of North Nashua. So we're trying to do all of that. The other projects that are listed there, we hope to get grant funds. And we're also watching to see if any project has an overage that we might need to tap into that fund. We have plenty of projects to spend this money on. We're just trying to maximize its usage.
We don't have Manusnaut Brook up there, but Manusnaut Brook we had it on the last slide. That's a huge project because of the logistics of it, and it's right downtown, and those restaurants, and everyone's been so successful there. The Manning Ave building has been purchased by Greenleaf, and they're bringing all their people over. So you have this highly concentrated area there, and we're going to have to do like the river and all of the bankings and everything related to it while all that construction is going to be underway while all those businesses are going to. So it's a lot of logistics for us. So we're trying to get that out the door and award that bid so we can get started on it sooner than later. But again, so we try to use these. So we try to hold on to that 3.6, 3.7 million as a gap. So if we don't get the grant, then we can use that funding. Or if we get a grant and it requires the city funding, then we can use it for that, rather than say, well, let's just take the 3.7 million and fund all those things. We want to get more out of it. Right? Is that easy way to say it? Okay. More for your money. You want to take this one here?
Sure. So we have been able to use free cash for, one-time purchases and capital items. We used a lot of American Rescue Plan money to cover the capital items. And some of the things we were able to do is public safety vehicles for both police and fire and DPW. There were, frontline cruisers that were needed at the time, the body cams and tasers for the police. We implemented a whole new program for them, and it's been, wonderful. And we paid for, several years of that and getting it up and started. The cost of the paramedic program, which has been, very successful in the city and added a lot of benefit to all of the citizens. I don't know if they really realize the true benefit of that, but that's a huge
when you get the service
program.
That's when you really realize it. But
Yep.
it's added so much value to healthcare and treatment of first responders to the city is just unmeasurable.
Yep.
in my opinion.
I'm sorry, I just have a real quick question, and I don't know if it's for you or for the fire department, but with all that really great work, I was just curious if they tracked the types of calls that they
Every
went
single one
to,
of them.
Yep.
and if that was information that, you
They'll
reviewed
have
or
it.
went to.
They'll have it. They track every single call. Same with police.
Okay.
No matter where they go, what they do, they could tell you the time of dispatch, what time they arrived, what time they cleared, all of that.
That's great. All right, thank
Turnaround
you.
time. So anyway, you can see the.
I was gonna say, yeah,
you can
they
see it.
just, we were able to use the money for excellent things that, we may have gotten to, but it probably would have taken us a little while, so.
Small business and economic development, we continue to have businesses of every size. There's incredible demand still. Some days it gets tough because we're not able to match. We'll get calls for, and for, 3,000 square feet downtown. Well, I don't know about you, but there's no place that's got 3,000 square feet downtown. And there's actually almost nowhere downtown right now, but, that could change. You never know. But almost everything is full, even despite retail. There are some exciting things that happen up at Twin City with the new owners. The mall people continue to work on their redevelopment plan, which we should have something very soon. Water Tower Plaza, other than, I think the only vacancy is the fresh space that they have there for Amazon. I think almost every retail strip, anything in town is pretty much full. And so it gets a little bit, it gets challenging and frustrating because I don't want to lose anything. I don't want to lose one. If it's somebody looking for 500 square feet, I want to get that 500 square feet for them. But businesses continue to open, and we've had more than 30 small businesses opening every year. Some years it's a little higher, some years it's a little lower, but it's just around 30. We started doing events downtown. We started with First Night. We raised with Fitchburg, and it was a really good event. I really liked the whole partnership between the two cities, working with the chamber. But we had to raise a lot of money for one day. And the pre-sales, the buttons that were pre-sold is really what carried this, because if you ended up at a lousy night and the weather was terrible, people would say, let's just get some food and go home and light the fire. And people wouldn't come out. If you had your button, you'd come out, but most of the time. So we just decided that it was just a lot of money to raise for one night, one day. And so started looking at things a little bit differently. And we started doing events downtown and just kept adding to them and adding to them. And now I get strange looks when we add another thing. A couple of them we're going to combine so that we can kind of shrink the list, but we're really adding to it anyway. But we must be doing something right, because it seems like every community sort of carbon copies some of the things that we're doing. They realize that these are good things to do for the community. It's good for business. It brings families and community together, and they've been all really successful.
I think the funny looks come on Groundhog Day when you're out there. That's when the funny looks come.
I don't know. That could work both ways if some people see the pictures. They might question whether or not. All right. Anyway, Small Business Economic Development, Chamber of Commerce partnership. We do monthly meetings. Staff attends meetings. We have a meeting tomorrow for downtown. We do this. We've had this technical review process for many years. It's not to scare the business. It's really to give them the heads up so they make sure that they understand the sorts of things. It's also helpful when it gets to the planning board, because we make recommendations to the planning board on different projects. But most of the time, it's just a heads up, and we're really helping them and I think saving them money on discovery, on finding out, the size of a pipe, and that might be in the ground, or something that's antiquated they might want to look at. So it's a really, the feedback that we've got is it's been really helpful for them. We just started one with Chick-fil-A up at Twin City, and my feedback from the property owners and the Chick people were, happy with, like, wow, that was a really good process. We wish that was everywhere else. But it really is to provide guidance to, the project proponents. sharing. I think we have a good network and good relationships amongst businesses. Just got a phone call from a business that wants to help out somebody that's got some, illness in their family and wonder how they could help, if we could help, and works good. Discussions of upcoming events and projects. So we really try to adapt to changing world. The newspaper isn't as significant as it used to be. People used to read it from the front page and have the weather in it, to legal notices, to divorce and weddings and births and all of that. And that's just not where most of the information is. So we try to be where our customers are. If they're on social media, that's where we are. If they're coming home or for work, we got a digital sign. We do the cable shows, we do the morning briefings. Wherever people are, that's where we try to catch them. This is interesting, and as you know, the most affordable, and this is all data from the DOR, as you leave metropolitan Boston, the most affordable community as you go west is us. And the demand for housing, for apartments, for housing, for new houses is more than I've ever seen it. And the average single-family tax bill in statewide is $7,732. Obviously, it's significantly less at $6,205 here in Leominster. And I really want to point out that if you retired 20 years ago and you literally are on a fixed income, we find, we had a meeting about this morning with department heads, people want to just stay in their house. They really, they've worked their whole life. They want to stay in their house. And you can tell them that their house is worth $700,000 or $600,000, and you can tell them they can go live in a nice apartment somewhere, or they can move to Florida where it's warm in the winter, but they really want to just stay in their house. And it's getting more and more difficult for people in that situation to remain in their house. And we have elderly exemptions, we have veterans exemptions, but it's still a struggle for them. And that's why we really work hard to try to stay within that Prop 2.5 and really try to use our funding, because that's a everyday issue for us. We face that every day. We're interacting with families and elderly and children of the elderly who, reverse mortgages. Eventually, if you live long enough, Councilor Freed, you understand this, at some point that money's going to run out. And we're beginning to see the signs of the fact that people got a reverse mortgage and that's starting to run out. And they were paying their taxes and bills and heat and hot water and taxes and insurance and everything else. So it's becoming a more real problem every single day. And I used to think when they first built the first, assisted living, I'm like, wow, this is pretty good living. I think I'd like to go here now. It's not bad. But the reality is that's not where people want. That's not for everybody. And the majority just want to stay in their house.
I think, too, on reverse mortgages, we found out the hard way on one incident where someone was really in need of help, and the reverse mortgage was really up there. And I had them call Ellen Racine and found out that you can't use any CDBG money if you've got a reverse mortgage. So people really need to know that up front, because if that's your CDBG money, I'm sure there are a lot of other benefits that they're not going to be able to use, and then they're really strapped at that point.
We've saved several homeowners from different parts of the city. We went as long as we could and kept stretching it out and kept trying to get them assistance, and then eventually they just lost their homes. There just was no way. There was no equity in the property, et cetera. So anyway, that's the point here is that, we're looking at new growth. There has to be other growth coming in. We have to, it's a simple process. It's either going to come from the taxpayers by going over 2.5, or it's going to come from new growth. And that's the area that we continue to push for, is new growth. We hope the redevelopment of the mall helps. We hope that we've got some apartment complexes coming in that will give us some new growth, but there are a number of conversations I have with people like, we like it just the way we are, the city is right now. And they're like, well, I do too, but there's a cost associated with that, of that. And, many of the towns pay to keep everything out, but they can afford it. If you look at their tax bill, it's way above $7,700. So that's a real life situation that happens and is going on as we speak. there's some of the examples. I know it's really low. I mean, it's small. You can see the average tax bills in the region. And many are above that, many are below that. But you can see this is average. Now, some people may look at this and say, my bill's $8,000. Yeah, my bill is $8,000. But other people's may be $4,000 or whatever. But we're looking at averages here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I said, a lot of those towns, they keep cell service out. There's no cell towers. There's no industry. And there's a cost associated with that. We don't have that luxury. Things that we fund, and this is easily to quantify. You know, many communities, they pay for school transportation. We pick up every kid. No schools, no fees for school sports clubs, new paramedic program, health services, extensive business services to build our community. Curbside trash and recycling. We're the first to put out, in the state, to put out 90-gallon containers for both recycling and trash. Hazardous waste days, recycling events, pick up those mattresses, bulk. We pick up, I don't know how much furniture we pick up, but it's amazing how much furniture we pick up every week. Go ahead. In summary, the budget fully funds city and school departments, allowing us to meet our or exceed our goals. We paying cash for projects, save millions of dollars, result in less burden on the taxpayers. We're matching ARPA funds with capital needs, paid for many of the items on our 5-year capital plan, which allows us to accelerate that, puts us in much better shape than where we were. Committing to payments to our pension system has put us in a much better position than most other communities. It's the one call we get the most is, how did you guys get to that point where you were able to fully fund your pension? The second one is, how did you separate your stormwater from your sewer system? People just waited too long, and now it's costing phenomenal amounts of money. We did it a little at a time, thanks to Roger Brooks, DPW. And then most importantly, we'll continue to be fiscally responsible and continue practices and policies that have made us successful. And we are the finalist for the All-American City 2025. So we're trying to fit all this in with everything else. I guess it'll happen. Thank you, and as always, more to come.
Mayor, what's the
Thank you.
status of our hotels right now? Are they all paying their room taxes?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to figure out this whole meals tax thing and when it starts and everything. That hasn't been exactly easy to find out, but we'll have it ready for when it
It's supposed to start
kicks in.
July 1st.
Yeah, July 1st, so we hope to have
So
everything.
the hotel over by Friendly's on your Home Goods, they're paying now?
What rooms they rent, the ones that they don't have a lease with, what's the organization that's up there? Why does it slip in my mind? SMOC. Then they pay on those.
It's got to still be the majority of non-paying because they still have the sign covered. And so I would think the majority, we're not getting any taxes on that.
No, not in the majority.
And just one other question with, maybe for Wendy, I guess, with all the money that we're able to put into the high flooding areas that we have been aware of, the Burridge Ave and Pleasant and Colburn. Once these are, will they be done, or is this the beginning of a process? Do we know?
Well, for example, Burridge Ave we're in the design phase right now. And
Right.
we'd apply for construction funds, which
It's a process.
the state's very interested in that project, so, you know, the Malvern Street project at Lancaster, that will be complete. The Mechanic Street project, the other half.
Left-hand
not the-
side
yeah,
there.
the other
Right.
half, that will be complete. Pleasant at Colburn, all the infrastructure will be complete. And then we're gonna have to do a little bit of we may have to get a small grant maybe for the actual site itself to improve. I can't really it's an environmental issue that we may have to, there's plenty of grants out there to do it, but they have to do the rest of the work first, all the infrastructure,
Right.
the road, and all that first. And then we'll see what that status of that actually is on the site.
You're talking
If
about
we have-
Burridge?
I'm talking about Pleasant at
Oh,
Colburn.
Pleasant,
So, you know, but the project will be substantially done. It's just a matter of if there's anything left that we need to do after. It's all because the money has to be spent by MassDOT under a certain time frame because it's flood money. And then the permitting for the rest of it takes so long with the money that won't be available anymore. So, but they're hoping to, you know, substantially complete that project.
And the
So
Burridge
some of these other areas in the city that we know need attention down the road, and I don't think we have a lot of them, these are the major ones, but like the whole Merriam Avenue area, that got hit pretty hard during the flooding. So there might be opportunities to apply for some grants to start working on some of those areas as well.
Believe me, we have their attention. We have the attention of everybody, I think, in the Northeast in terms of storms. And everyone has really been helpful to us. And so we're taking, I shouldn't say taking advantage of it, we're appreciative of it. But like Burridge Ave, I can give you a real simple,
Yeah,
I can give you the whole presentation.
that's been forever, yeah.
Here's the presentation. There are 3 million gallons of water that end up in that Burridge Ave area. That has to get to the Nashua. So there's the presentation.
That's been over a 30-year problem.
Right,
I
but I'm
mean-
just saying, that's the, counselor, that's your ward.
Oh, yes, oh,
I'll tell
yes,
you,
yeah.
real easy, you gotta take 3 million gallons and get it to the Nashua.
Doesn't seem too difficult.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for the, you know, wonderful presentation. There's just a couple of things that I want to, you know, point out in talking to the comptroller, if I'm correct. We have up to 6 million in the untapped levy capacity, correct? That's what I
Just
heard.
under.
Just under. And we're going to tap into their, based on all the assumptions we know now, could get a little better, though, if things are different from the state, about $500,000 to balance the budget, correct?
Yes, yep.
Just so that
That's what we're
the public
estimating.
understands.
However, it will definitely change. We don't have the final state numbers. We don't have the valuations that are going to be this year. And,
We don't have the new growth number.
We don't have the new
Right,
growth
and
number.
we don't have the meals tax.
yep, or the meal
So that could
tax.
be wiped out.
It could
We
be,
just don't know.
or
Yep.
very, or much more minimal than $500,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And remember that,
Yep.
over 6 million is what we haven't raised under Prop 2.5. So
Right.
those are years that we could have raised taxes and we didn't.
That was like 05, 06, 07, sometime in
And
that
it's
time.
cumulative, because, did you
It
ever
is-
find the
I
number on that?
didn't. I'm sorry.
It's, what was the last number, Mark, we talked about?
6.14%.
But then if you add the cumulative each year, that 6 million turns
It
into,
was, yeah, it was, just a few years ago, it was 5.5%. Now it's up to 6.14.
Yeah. but it's like 50 million, because we haven't used it
Yeah.
cumulative.
Yeah.
That means there's $50 million that could have been put into the budget that's not there, that we could have tapped. But
That's,
again,
that's what Moody's doesn't
Right.
like us to do.
well, I know that, but the taxpayer,
It's good for the taxpayer, yeah.
you have
that's
to be
true.
talking to people out there,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to be hearing their stories about how difficult it's becoming. And I'm realizing more and
In
more.
sum, those are taxes we didn't collect that we were able to
Absolutely.
legally collect based on the
didn't.
2.5.
Correct.
Exactly.
Statute.
We gave it back, especially 4 years ago, we gave almost $1 million back. We didn't, we only raised like just under 2%. So
Right.
it's, you know, just compounds. When you don't collect it then and all the subsequent years, then, you know, we have to,
There's a big push on by a lot of communities to go after the state and try to raise that 2.5%. With all the mandates they're forcing on everybody, that's what's strapping. A lot of these communities that are hurting aren't just bad management. Some of them are,
Obviously.
over the years, but some of them are just suffering because they're stuck.
Right.
I mean, you got mandates, and they're in a position that they have to fix something, and they can only raise the taxes 2.5%. So
Right.
I know there's a huge push by a lot of communities now that are trying to gather enough steam to really raise that.
mean-
I don't know that that's right or wrong, but I think either the mandates have to stop, or there's got to be a way to be able to pay for those.
it's true. I mean, ours is 2.4 million for our 2.5%. The school's increase is, you know, 1.6, almost 1.7. So it leaves about $800,000 for the rest of the city. And that's just not practical. I mean,
Right.
the school doesn't need the money either, but the inflation rates just on contracts to keep all the wonderful services that we just said that this city loves. It's expensive. So.
I just wanted to say something really briefly, just going back to about a minute and a half ago. Wendy, I just want to thank you for your great work, especially in those flood areas and the projects that we have going on. I just wanted to piggyback on Councilor Frieda's comment about being glad to know that we can possibly look to future projects for some, flooding issues and things that I know, especially in my ward, like you said, Miriam Ave and in that area, that there have been issues, predating September 11th. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. One of the other things I wanted to point out is page 009, in case anybody notices. We'll get that out of the way while you're here. The mayor's salary and wages has went up, well, his account, that
What?
item
I got a raise?
has
I had to ask her
has went up
how much the
from
mayor made it.
Not
about
you.
400,000 to 504.
Is that what I make, 400,000?
Yeah. And the reason for that, I had noticed that, the reason for that is because you moved a position out of building
Correct.
and into, under his category for code enforcement, because
Right.
he kind of does, the code enforcement is for.
For all the departments.
Right, so
Yep.
in case anyone, is rifling through and notices that.
Yep, it
that's-
looks like
that's
it's a
the
new
reason
position
for
because
that.
it has zeros in the first
Yep.
2 years, but it's not, it's just a
Right, it's a
reclassification.
And it's really, Council, it's really compliance.
Yeah.
And a lot of the boards and commissions will issue order of compliance, or, orders and conditions. And then sometimes we're not as good as checking on those as we should, and we want to be fair to everyone. So it's fair for you and fair for, somebody that walks in off the street from out of town, in town. And we have a lot of people that take advantage of making apartments where they shouldn't be, or doing certain things, or just hoping that we forget, the planning board issues certain orders and conditions. And Luke has been really instrumental on this marijuana growing facilities and the retailers, where it's just a pile of paper and agreements that we made that just are hard to, again, compliance. And we just don't have the people to do it, and adding that position. So we work really closely between the department heads, our office, and with the compliance officer.
I definitely think it adds a lot of value into the town and into the city, and, he's very firm, he's fair. A lot of people, respect him, and I think he's doing a lot of good to ensure that, the city, we maintain, the neighborhoods and the order in the city. Otherwise, things just get so out of hand. You'll never be able to reel it in. So he's doing a good job, and I think the position is certainly very valuable. And I just wanted to point that out in the budget in case anyone noticed why that increase there. I think I just want to ask Wendy really quick, the $3.2 million on the Lancaster Street project. Do you know if that has anything to do, or if there's going to be any money spent on the riverbank at all, like going up the riverbank to reinforce it? I don't know if anybody's looked at that, but during the flood, up near Pastaland, right alongside Pastaland, going up in, I guess you'd be heading west if you were walking up the long side of the river. Looks pretty unstable, and I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that, or if
Fall Brook?
that grant will, what's that?
Fall Brook?
Yeah, that brook, right, the brook. If anybody's looked at that, or if that grant has anything to do with stabilizing the bank there at all, or if it's just the road structure. So if you can.
Well, we have, I'm sure it's going to be covered in one of these grants, because we've got, the structure of all of this is, we've got a municipal paving grant in for Lancaster Street. We've got the culvert grant, which is part of Litchfield. That is Fallbrook, the culvert grant. It's gonna, small bridge grant. We've got all these grants. So I will check with the DPW and make sure it's covered in there somewhere. The 3.2 is I mean, we're up to like 5 or 6 million at least in that area. So I'll check with them to make sure that that's on their list.
So we're doing.
Sounds good.
Over by El Camino, that's part of the Fall Brook.
Yeah,
That's getting
that-
done.
Yeah,
Well, once we know which grant covers what, we'll add that to the scope of services, so they take a look at it. But they'll look at it, I mean, similar to Central Street right now. I mean, that includes everything. You see some of the culvert pipe and the drain pipe that's down there, the bridge. You're doing it all. And, oh, by the way, as you get calls about roundabouts, I can just tell you, the state is, we went back and forth with this for over 2 years. They're not gonna do traffic signals unless there's absolutely necessary. And, you know, their view on it is that traffic signals go, when power runs out, the traffic signals go, they break, the lights burn out, people run lights, and when they do, they're traveling quickly, and when you get in an accident, they're usually bad. On a roundabout, if you get in an accident, they're usually not that bad, although it's an accident. Usually, someone's clearly at fault because you were either in the roundabout or you weren't. So there are a number of reasons why they're not putting lights at Litchfield and Central, but other intersections that we've had them look at, again, they're only recommending and will approve traffic signals if it's absolutely necessary and there's no way to put a roundabout. So as you talk to people, I know it's a bone of contention with people. There have been some other projects in the area that weren't exactly the perfect role model for roundabouts, so everyone looks at those, but that's the answer, is they absolutely won't unless it's.
I'm hoping they don't put the roundabout in and figure out they didn't make any good decision with it and have to rip it all out and have another 2-year project redesigning and refixing it and moving it all around like, I don't know, people move around their living room furniture, you know?
Well, they're not gonna do that.
So-
Well, they may do that, but they're not gonna put lights, I can tell you that. It's definitely not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere, that's everywhere in the state, that's the norm today, and that's pretty much around the country, is the new norm is a roundabout, unless it's absolutely can't be done in any other way.
I think we can all take a week off once they open the roundabout on Central Street, because we're all gonna be hearing that.
Yep.
I'm hearing it now, and it's not even up, so.
I'm going to go to the members of finance, see if they have any questions. Councilor Cormier? Councilor Tossi, do you have anything that you want to ask at this juncture?
No, not at this point. There's a lot of information to absorb here, and just great job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other councilor have any other questions or comments so far on the mayor's presentation? Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr.
Yep, thank you very much. I think this is for Jen. When I was looking at the budget, and I looked at some of the salary lines and then went into the detail, it looked like, I just want to confirm that the change from this year for a specific individual, whether it's a department head or an assistant or a clerk, that's all part of the salary scale. Is that right? So these match up to salary scales.
They do.
Because some of them were over 10% jumps from one year to the next.
Yeah, it's probably because the FY25 numbers that were in there, we didn't have the increases for FY25.
Okay.
So they're actually at the FY24 rate. And so then we, budgeted the collective bargaining. When everything's done, we reallocated. That's what we sent down, is that we reallocated those funds into the proper accounts. So, but when we compare original budget to original budget,
Right.
that's why it's almost, 2.5 year swing,
Or
so.
step increases.
Yep, step increases, all of that is,
Preparation.
yep.
A new
Right.
employee might get a step increase after 3 years. Or
Right,
2 years.
right, and that brings me to my other point, which I say every year at the budget hearings, is that it would be really helpful to have budget actuals. The last 3 budget years are really irrelevant, because I really want to know what was spent, and I know that the actuals are included, in a spreadsheet at the end of the binder, but if we could have the actuals that are plugged in, last year's budget, it's come and gone. I really want to know, how did the spending go, and how does that match up with what's being budgeted this year? So that, your point right there, is very important, because if the budget that's in here that we're looking at to compare FY26's budget to isn't accurate, right? Because the information came later or whatever. It would be helpful to just have the real information.
Well, and we include them in the back so that you do have the actual information, but we don't do them on purpose. So this year, the salaries are, different, but we want to go off of the original budget. We don't necessarily want to include the council orders that have come down for different reasons because, most of the time those are hopefully for one-time things. Sometimes they're not, but overall, they usually aren't something that we want to consider to make permanent in the budget. So that's why we go from original budget to original budget.
But that would be easy to isolate because the monies that have been taken out of stabilization, excess and deficiency, the capital fund, all of those things could just be pulled out as an addendum. I mean, the ongoing expenses, salaries, expenses, would be really helpful to see the actuals. I understand, the one-time communication requests that we get that come out of, free cash and those other account stabilization. Those could be pulled out, and put on a separate page. I understand that. Although we still do pay, and I know this has been a problem, not a problem, but it's been a question for a long, long time. We still pay overtime for public safety folks out of stabilization. So, again, I just will go on the record to say it would be really helpful to be able to evaluate a budget against what was actually spent. And it would help, eliminate that kind of a question. I was looking at these numbers thinking, these are crazy. They're over 10% raises, 10.3% raises. And I thought, well, there has to be something to it. And you just explained that.
Okay. Yep.
Good. The other point I want to make, too, is...
Just one thing. One has almost nothing to do with the other. So when the school department gets up here, what happens is they may have ads out for new positions. I don't know what that total amount might be, but if you can't fill those positions, you might transfer that to another account. So at the end of the year, you're not going to get an actual of what you really spent on personnel because you couldn't, like we have empty positions at the DPW right now for mechanic. Well, I can't give you something to compare to that says that this year is comparison to next year because we couldn't hire somebody for last year. Right. So that now looks like there's an increase in that budget or somebody just got a big raise in the auto mechanic department because last year we couldn't find anybody to do the position. So all the costs are right here. Everything is right here in terms of what we spent.
Right, but it really doesn't line up with the budget, is my point.
Well, absolutely does.
Well, then it should be easy to put it in budget form right next to the budget in the template that we have.
Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll point out to you right now. I mean, it's apples and apples, but when we can't hire people, the bulk of the budget is personnel. If you can't, if somebody left the position, we have a lot of retirements in the police department.
Well, a perfect example.
Excuse me, hold on. If last year we had a lot of retirements in the police department, we have all new personnel. The difference is substantial between a person that was here for 30 years and somebody that just started. So that isn't going to give you a good comparison to anything. So most of the budget is personnel. So the best thing is look at the back of this here, and that will give you an actual of what we spend. But then you've got to be able to compare it to, the reality of somebody that's starting at step 1 and somebody that left at step, 10 or 8. So it's not a good comparison on the actual. We can give you the total amount that we spent. And oh, by the way, we don't fund personnel with police and fire. We do overtime as necessary. But a lot of that money might come in from the insurance companies to pay for fire or paramedics or whatever. So that changes. So what you want to do is try to compare the actual. We have the actual. This is the actual that we give you. But that can change depending on what might be happening with hiring personnel. Where we place a department head. The new department heads are going to start at it's going to start $20,000 or $30,000 less than a new department. So to compare that, looks like it's a 35% increase. So if you look at that and say, well, geez, we got a 35% increase, that's not actual. That's not a good way of looking at it. The best way is to look at the actual, what we spent, and then compare it to this year, or look at what we gave you, which is a year-to-year comparison. Because it's the total amount in that, but the total budget. In other words, can you go back to some of the slides here? Just because this is worth explaining. So when we do a comparison, it's the total amount that we spent in those years, and now we're projecting what we're going to spend in this year. And that's your best way. to tell what the budget was in '22 and what it is now. Those are the total actual numbers.
Those are the budgeted numbers and the projected numbers. They're not the real spending. Because the spending, and.
No,
and
they are.
They're not.
But
They're-
what I would give you would be this exact
Right.
report.
We gave it to you. It's right here.
But in the budget form, so that we're comparing,
But it's the same thing.
It's the same exact thing.
It is, it's by org, and that's how we have the budgets in the front, for the front report, and it's,
That exact duplicate of what it was last year
okay.
in its form.
And same question about revenue sources, right? We haven't seen an annual report, I think, in a few years. I'm not sure why, because the annual reports used to have the actuals of the revenue sources that came in. I mean, we project them at one thing, but then they actually come in higher or lower.
We get those.
they used to be in the annual report. We usually just send down expenses on a
Right.
bi-weekly basis.
Right, we don't see those, right, and that would be helpful as well.
Right,
Because
but we give them to you, instead of the annual report, we give them to you now bi-weekly.
Not the revenue. No,
The expenses.
no, the expenses, not the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then one final thing, and this will probably come up during the school department conversation. I always want to point out that when we talk about a $104 million school budget, net school spending budget, 70% of that is coming from the state. People think, oh my goodness, and it's a huge it's a huge chunk of the budget. It's a huge part of the pie when you look at the pie and the way that the expenses are. But 70% of that $104 million is coming from the state.
But they still increase it about 8% a year, which is 4% for us. And so percentage-wise, it's, yes, they do cover a large portion of it, but it still leaves a large portion for us to cover annually as well.
No question about it, but I just think people need to have that reference. 30% of it is the city's responsibility, 70% of it is coming from the state.
Right, and in places like Lawrence, it's 10. It's all relevant. It's a
Well,
formula that, we follow the same formula that every other city and town in the state follows. It's just their formula. I didn't come up with the formula, they did.
No, I just think it's important for Leominster residents to know that that's the
Yes.
fact.
And it's the same Leominster residents who have all these gas stations in town, and we pay the gas tax while other communities don't have any gas stations, but they get gas tax. It's the same businesses in this town, and we have 74 factories left in town that pay taxes to the state so that we have to go back and beg for all this money. The residents of this town pay sales tax, pay state heritage tax, inheritance tax, pay all these taxes, send it down to Boston, so we have to beg for every single penny that we get. So if they're sending back 70%, we should be getting 80% based on what we give them. And take and look at the actuals on what we send to Boston every year since 2022, and look at what we get back in return for the money that this community sends down there. So we have to go down there and beg on our knees to get a couple sprinkles back, while Boston and some of these other communities get the banana split. We get almost nothing, but we provide all the services as a city. We help our community. We keep our tax revenue down. And where do we get we give 70%. Well, we give a lot more in tax revenue than 70% to the state.
Well-
So they should be giving us a lot more money back so we can keep taxes down on those elderly that are trying to stay in their homes. And most of the money that they get from Social Security is to pay their real estate taxes, to pay insurance, just to stay in their house.
Food.
Insurance, food, and everything else. So it's sinful that they send us back 70% of that budget after we send triple that down to the state. And it's sinful that we have to do that. So 70% is 70%, but so is every other community has to follow the formula. And we just follow the formula. So that's relevant to everyone. And it
Right.
changes and fluctuates. Just like the state says they're giving us 76% reimbursement on a new school, it's 56%. Did they tell anybody that? No. Did I have to tell them and prove it to them on the Zoom call? Yes. And that's another thing that's sinful, because they determine what's eligible and what's non-eligible. I have no control over that. So here we are, the citizens of Leominster have to pay 56%, while the state runs around and say they're going to fund this thing for 76%. So I will take us and compare what we contribute to the state from this community any day of the week to get 70% back from school assistance. They should be going a lot more than that.
Not counting the non-eligible
Yeah.
net school spending of well over, what, $8 million.
Transportation. Right.
It's actually 66%
Yeah.
that's coming to us.
Yeah,
On
exactly.
On these numbers this year.
Yeah, and it's sinful. sinful to put on the backs of people that can really are struggling to hang in there. I don't know how families are doing it. I don't know. But I know what we did is we really tried to keep the cost down, tried to put on events, try to pick up kids at the curb so we can get them to school, offer good services at the schools, and make it affordable so people can hang in there. But it's getting tougher and tougher. So
No question. It's a good thing we got over $20 million from the state for all of the infrastructure grants.
That is great, yes, but we should have gotten $30 million from the feds, and we didn't. And that is probably the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen in working for government. We proved to them that we had $30 million in damage, and now
5 times.
we've had to go
Yeah, that was
piecemeal.
terrible.
Piecemeal. It's job security for me, I guess, but piecemeal for every little problem. 57 sites, and they said no.
and we documented everything. We hired private engineers, so we gave real cost.
Yep.
We did projects and that got flooded out and said, here, we just did this 3 months ago. We just did Route 13. We handed them the invoice and said, here, here's it. No, our estimate was a third of that. And then they denied us on all of it.
Then you had to redo it again within 24-hour period.
Yeah, exactly. So this team has done incredible work. City, schools, we got through this storm, and I think that's proof of teamwork in this city, that we were able to get through in the way that we did. And that's the thing that we're bringing to the League of Cities, to show them that we're a all-American city, that we work together. We can get things done despite the fact that government gets in the way time and time again. But we just forge on.
Okay, are there any other questions for the mayor before we move on to the schools? Seeing none, I'm sure mayor is not going too far as the chairman of the schools. We'll just.
Thank you for, I know we've put a lot on your table. We've had to, all this ARPA money and the ESSER stuff, and then we've had free cash things, appropriations, transfers. We appreciate your patience with us. I know that there were a couple of times we didn't have the proper language in here for appropriations. We fixed that. That's better now. But thank you for your patience. I know it comes down to you, and we put a lot on you, and just our appreciation is, our team goes forward. Sometimes we don't get to thank people, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor, Jen,
Yes,
Wendy.
thank you.
And I'm gonna hold a sign at the roundabout. I'm gonna blame it on you.
Yeah, you might as well. You might as well.
Ward 3's
Sure, sure, no problem. You can put my phone number on there, too. You can call me at all hours of the day and night. No problem.
All you have to do is answer it.
Yeah. Need help? So the school department, the Superintendent Desmond.
Your book is thicker than mine. What's going on?
Thank you. Oh, are you using this? Yes. You can.
Is it in there?
That's okay, we have printed copies. We have hard copies.
Just for the public while they're getting ready.
Yeah, we can email the presentation so they can get it up.
Okay, this is on the basic, page is 096 in the budget book. Then there's a detailed summary of all of the spending for the fiscal year 2026 school budget, which I'm sure, do you put this budget book online? Do you put this all go online?
This is online.
Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Jen,
good.
there's room up here if you want to sit up here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we can make room.
I introduce this area all the time.
That's right.
Want to take a picture, Jen?
Doesn't look like John Richard, but that's the city he's to sit in all the time.
Okay. Well, I just forwarded that off to Wendy to see if we can, to see if we can get that up on the screen. But I think it would still be beneficial for everyone to have it in front of you. You're very welcome. As some of the print can be very small. And I know I had a hard time seeing the screen from back there, so.
My eyes hurt.
yes, please. That'd be
So
great.
I'm going to just do a quick introduction before we pull up the presentation. We're having some technical difficulties. But I want to first thank the school committee and the Leominster Public School Administrative Team. They're here tonight to support the presentation of the FY26 budget. I also want to thank the Mayor's Office, Wendy and Jen, for all their support and collaboration this year. It has all impacted the end result, which is this FY26 budget. The budget is a budget that began early on in December. We had all of our school principals come and present to our administrative team all of their improvement plans and how their budget requests would strengthen the overall school landscape for the coming school year. And they presented that with data that grounded their requests in overall student achievement. And so that's where we started, and then there were lots of conversations and collaborative work with the city around funds available, and as a result, we present tonight this budget that is that has a clear instructional vision, which is really looking at how do we expand access to advanced coursework, how do we add Chapter 74 programs at CTEI, and how do we overall strengthen academic achievement through multi-tiered systems of support. So collectively, we believe that the investments in this budget position us well to meet the evolving needs of our students, staff, and greater community while advancing a shared commitment to educational excellence. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to Melanie, our business manager, to go over the highlights of the presentation tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Wendy, for driving. I appreciate that. I think you've heard a few things this evening that they may be a little repetitive, but it's worth repeating. We are seeing that the net school spending for the school is projected for fiscal 26 to increase by $7.58 million, as the Mayor and Jen had said. $5.95 million from Chapter 70 aid and $1.63 from our local contribution. This amount is not final, which I believe they had mentioned, as the House and Senate is still debating and will reconcile their budget versions with a final budget expected hopefully by June or July. Hopefully. Let's
You
hope.
expect it to be more, right? Looking at the House and the Senate.
Wishful thinking, you know?
Well,
hopefully.
Typically they are, but the percentage that they
Correct.
usually increase was not as much for the second round.
Right.
right, but it's still higher than the governor's budget.
Well, yeah, because it goes up and then it goes down. The House is always like the lowest. But the next step to the Senate was not as much of an increase, so we don't know.
Right. We go with, our preliminaries and hopefully it comes in higher, then that's a great thing to see. Thank you. In its 5th year, the Student Opportunity Act continues to support our low-income students, English learners, and students with special needs. For fiscal 26, the Leominster Public Schools received an additional $3.3 million, driven by a 9.1% increase in the low-income student rate for our Chapter 70. Low-income enrollments based on students in public assistance programs, students certified as low-income, and those identified as homeless through the McKinney-Vento Act. Since fiscal 23, the low-income rate in Chapter 70 funding has risen 33.8%, from $5,843 per student to $7,815 per student in fiscal 26. Other key factors in the fiscal 26 budget, they're going to include a separate inflation factor for health insurance, increased funding for in-district special education, and a higher per pupil allocation for the English learners. So they continue to work on the Student Opportunity Act. I believe we have one more year of that, and then we'll see what happens with our Chapter 70 increases. The foundation enrollment calculated by DESE rose, as they said, by 113 students, reaching us to the 6,122 mark for our total student population. That is, of course, as of last October 1, because that's where our numbers come from. The fiscal '26 general fund budget will be supplemented by various resources, including the revolving accounts for specific programs such as Circuit Breaker, which help to fund our tuition for special education, and School Choice, which helps us with the out-of-district students that come in. These funds listed under the other revenue and revolving include both fiscal '26 estimates and fiscal '25 carryover revenue. The district also receives recurring federal and state grant funding to support its goals, both through the school and through the city. Thank you. It is important to note the one-time federal funding provided for COVID-19 has now been fully expended. And as the mayor had pointed out, we did one-time purchases and accelerated our projects and capital projects and things of that nature, which put us in a really nice position. The fiscal '26 general fund budget request is divided into 7 categories, as you can see. We break it down based on wages, benefits, special education tuitions, our indirect charges, our repair and maintenance budget, and technology. And then we have left over a nice sliver for other expenses. But our wages, salaries, and benefits are 80% of the school's budget. And to elaborate on that, in fiscal '26, the wages account for 63% of the general fund budget, totaling $3,009,207. This includes contractual increases, cost of living adjustments, step increases, lane changes, stipends. An additional $882,000 is allocated for the 12 unfilled posted positions that we want to carry over to fiscal '25 and that are necessary. And $925,000 is budgeted for the 12 new positions that I believe Mayor had on one of his slides, which are essential to address anticipated enrollment growth, student needs. The district is also requesting an increase in our athletic stipend budget to from $350,000 to $385,000. And in total, we are requesting 930 FTEs or full-time equivalent positions amounting to $70,037,582. So the other piece of that 80% that I mentioned is our benefits and fixed charges account for 17% of the school's budget request, covering insurance for both active and retired employees and their beneficiaries. These costs, as Jen had gone through with the mayor, have historically gone from anywhere to 0 and 14% increases. And that's actually low for the state right now. So we work closely with Jen to ensure that we have accurate projections. For the school portion, we are requesting a 10% increase for fiscal '26, totaling an increase of $1.5 million, driven by increased membership, the new positions that we're requesting, and the rising insurance costs. Special education tuitions account for 6% of our proposed budget, totaling $9,277,000. We are partially offsetting that $9 million by using the revolving funds. It's a little over $2 million to offset that $9 million cost. The costs fluctuate based on individual student service needs, new students moving into the district with specialized service requirements, and students aging out of the program. The state sets the rates for the out-of-district placements. So they set us at a 4.5% increase for our out-of-districts for fiscal '26. Over the past 14 years, increases have ranged from 2 to 17%. Yeah. For fiscal '26, we're projecting a 6.8% increase in our special education tuition costs for an increase of $590,000. We were able to carry forward $3.2 million in our circuit breaker, which will help us offset those costs. And I believe Jen had mentioned her indirects. The indirect charges represent those costs that the city supports the schools with, retirement, DPW, school resource officers, and state assessments for school choice, sending tuitions, and charter schools. Jen is gracious enough to provide us with an agreement with a summary and details with the estimates for the year. For fiscal '26, the total estimated indirect charges are $6,776,429.
And I would say just the biggest fluctuating item as you go down the line is the retirement.
Retirement.
Depending on if we're funded or not funded. It
Yep.
unfortunately swings. She's like, tell me what it is. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep, I do. I beg her early for numbers so that we can put it in our budget, but always with the understanding that it can change and
While we're on
fluctuate.
this page, if you look at the property assess liability insurance line, there's like a huge jump from FY '24 to '25 and '26. Do you know where that?
So yes, the estimates were actually low before. That's a number that we get very, very late. And I started asking David much earlier this year, so we ended up getting the budgeted numbers for 25 and 26, and we were grossly low.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah. But and thankfully it was on a good year because it wasn't when everything else was
Right.
high.
Right,
So
right.
that blended in.
Yeah, the directs were low back in the 23, 24 range. All right, moving on. So Leominster, of course, gratefully using some of those ESSER funds that we were receiving over the past few years. We've had significant technological advancements, enhancing the educational experience for both students and for our faculty. The tech department's dedicated to ensuring equitable access for all students and staff, offering hands-on experiential learning opportunities, and will continue investing in network infrastructure, improving the internet connectivity and reliability. The utility repair and maintenance budget is about 4% of the fiscal '26 budget, amounting to $4.7 million. This covers repair and maintenance for all 11 buildings, custodial supplies, our trash removal inside the building, and other related services. But we've made great strides on our aging buildings, and we've now gotten to a point where our maintenance is really in a maintenance mode. We're not putting out fires. We are really in that maintenance mode, and we can really be proactive with our expenses on that.
And I have to say, the MSBA even took that into account when they were looking at our new school, because the maintenance is such a big part. They don't want to give more money to a city or, district that's not going to maintain it.
That's not going to maintain it. Yep.
And we've got good
been
overall scores for
Good
that.
ratings?
Yes.
Not 70% ratings, but.
Don't get me going.
I know, I'm sorry. Okay, next slide, please. So the remaining 3% that I mentioned in that pie, in that little sliver, for the budget proposal is about $3.6 million. This covers essential expenses directly impacting students in the classroom and our district as a whole. We're talking medical therapeutic services, instructional supplies for the classroom, safety and security, professional development for our staff, athletics, summer programs, and many of the things that the new superintendent is looking forward to, putting in place, enhancing pathways at the high school, supporting for special education and much more. So these costs vary, but they are all crucial to the continued success of the district. So here is our budget. We are requesting $70,037,582 in wages and salaries, $34,499,878 in expenses, $6,776,429 in indirect charges, for a total fiscal '26 net school spending needs-based budget of $111,313,888. Thank you, as always, for your support of the schools. And any questions?
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. This is a nice detailed budget book, and I will admit that I did not read every single page, I will admit.
You have time.
But it is, it's very detailed, and we appreciate that
Sure.
very much. Some of the highlights on here are, obviously, it's already been touched upon. We're adding 12 new positions.
Yes.
They were all explained. I think the mayor's slide was up. Those new positions at the cost of $1,807,000, is that what I'm?
No.
What-
So I think we go
So-
back to the conversation of positions that were posted in fiscal '25,
Yeah.
but unfilled.
Okay.
So we break those out separately because they were part of our budget for fiscal '25, and we were going to, we are continuing those positions and hoping to hire those positions.
Right.
So we carry them into our fiscal '26 budget.
I got you.
So the 12 positions alone are actually what we call posted positions for fiscal '26, and that's the $925,000.
I gotcha, okay.
Sure.
Are you expecting those positions to be filled?
We have posted quite a few of them already to
Because
try and nab some good candidates.
Because I know that we had a year where there was, we were in a tough situation, and then, some fiscal years later, there was plenty of money for positions, and then we found out at the end of the fiscal year that, the money was there, but they couldn't fill them. So that was a little frustrating.
Yeah.
And then there was another year we didn't have the money, and we had to cut people. So it just gets frustrating. So do you expect that you're going to have success out there filling these?
So the strategy that we have utilized this year is to post early. So I will say there are neighboring communities that are having layoffs. And so I think that, we are one of the few communities that are actually hiring new positions. Many of those positions are support positions for students with individual education plans or for students that are classified as multilingual learners. So they're directly related to the SOA distribution that we're receiving, and many of these positions are mandated. With that said, some of the positions in the special education area, such as speech and language, OTPT, they're unique. And they are hard to fill in some cases, so we will try our very best to attract whoever is certified and is strong in these areas, but there are some positions that are hard to fill across the state.
Right, okay. All right, and I know it's been touched upon already. It seems like you're getting along well with the comptroller, and everybody agrees on chargebacks and the indirects. That was always a problem when I first got here. So everything's good there, which is good. I am going to ask other members of finance at this moment if they have any questions. Councilor Cormier, do you have anything?
I have no questions.
Councilor Tossi?
None at this time, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other members of the council? Councilor Robbins.
First and foremost, I want to start by sharing my appreciation for the fact that clubs and sports and that kind of stuff is still covered within the budget. That was something that I was really passionate about when I was on the school committee, and I'm glad to see that that's continuing. I think that's how we engage all of our students in this school district, and it's something unique that we offer here. So kudos to you guys on continuing that. I'm not sure if this is for Melanie or the superintendent. 113 new students on October 1st seems like a lot. Do we know, grade level where that's coming from? What is sparking that? If looking at the fourth or third tab in the binder, this is the highest year we've had going back to FY18, so.
I think for us, we are very cautious of what Leominster residents are in need of, but then also we have a school choice program. And so we are, this goes back to the administrative team. We work really hard to watch the trends, look at the openings across every grade level, and then actively support the school choice families that want to come in wherever there's an opening. And so we'll continue to do that. We make sure that our administrative school-based teams are withdrawing and registering students as they come in all summer long, so that we have a real pulse on where the openings are, so that we can fill them with our choice families when they become available. So our goal is to fill every seat based on our class size limits. And so, we'll continue to really push for that and be as cautious as possible around making sure that a seat is open and then we offer it to someone who wants to come to Leominster. But our programming is good, and so the people in outside communities want to come here. We cannot provide the number of seats for the demand at this point.
And is there a certain grade level we're seeing like a specific jump in, or is this just across the board?
It's across the board. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Noseworthy.
Thank you. I also want to first thank the superintendent, the mayor, school committee, the whole team, because I truly believe that our entire community benefits when we have excellent public education. I really feel like everything comes from that. So thank you so much. I know we're here to talk money, but I also just wanted to say that I appreciated all of your strategic priorities are important, but when you talk about equity, high expectations, and I really love that you talk about maintaining a culturally inclusive, joyful, engaging, and safe culture, because that's not just for our students, that's for the staff and everybody who works for the public schools. So it's something I appreciate that you actually brought into the priorities. So I just wanted to say that. And I think it goes to show, because in looking at the school choice numbers over the years, certainly many, I noticed the trend, students are staying. And I think that really speaks to the quality that you're providing. Two quick questions. Especially where, as the mayor mentioned, we're living during these difficult times and working within the net school spending budget. That delta that always exists sort of between ESL students, special education students, and their peers. I was just curious if you had seen any improvements over time. I know you're working within the constraints of what you have, so that was just one general question. And then the other general question I had, and I may have just overlooked it, you mentioned the increase in Portuguese speakers for ESL, which I know in my role and in others, I think we're sort of seeing that across the state. And I was just wondering how, again, working within the constraints of a net school spending budget, you were sort of thinking about that next larger, group of people speaking Portuguese. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So you're right. Within the budget, the added positions, there's a significant number of positions that are going to support our MLL or L. Most people know L as English learner, but we use multilingual learner because that's what the state typically uses. We have a plan for next year enhancing a multilingual learner pathway at the high school to meet the needs of the newer L learners that are coming in at the high school level. And so several of the added positions are direct instructional positions for multilingual learners.
Perfect, thank you. And again, just appreciate all of your efforts, especially during these difficult times in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions on the school portion of this, the school portion of this budget? Seeing none, that was short and sweet. We appreciate it very much. And if there's no other questions, I believe that completes our agenda for this evening. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Cormier, Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr, so moved. All those in favor? All right, we are adjourned. We'll be back here tomorrow night to finish the rest at 5:30 p.m.
The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.